If you've been gardening for any length of time, you already know mulch matters. We're told it keeps moisture in, weeds down, and temperatures steady. That's true, but it's only the surface story. What most gardeners are never told is that how you apply mulch can completely change what happens underground. On this episode of Soil Stories, I want to share one simple mulch trick that can double soil life in a single season, yet almost never gets mentioned in mainstream gardening advice. This isn't a fancy product or a secret ingredient, it's a shift in thinking, and once you understand it, you'll never mulch the same way again. Most gardening guides teach mulching as a protective blanket. Spread straw, wood chips, or leaves on top of the soil and walk away. The soil stays cooler, moisture is conserved, and weeds struggle to emerge. On the surface, everything looks right, but underground, something very different may be happening. When dry mulch is placed directly on bare soil, especially compacted or lifeless soil, it often acts like insulation without interaction. Microbes can't easily access it. Fungi struggle to bridge the gap between soil and mulch. Earthworms may stay deeper because the surface layer isn't biologically inviting. The mulch just sits there, slowly breaking down from the top rather than feeding the soil from the bottom. This is why, a lot of gardeners mulch faithfully year after year, but still end up with what folks call dead soil that just always needs more fertilizer. The soil might be protected, sure, but it's not actually being fed in a living, active way. The trick here is actually pretty simple but really powerful. Always mulch over something living or moist, never over just bare, dry soil. So, in practice, what this means is, you want to apply mulch after you've watered deeply after a nice rain or over a thin layer of fresh green material or compost. This creates what you might call a biological bridge between the soil and the mulch. And that bridge, well, that's where soil life just explodes. When there's moisture and those fresh organic signals right at the soil surface, the microbes wake up immediately. So, bacteria begin to multiply, and fungi start extending their hyphae upward into the mulch layer. Then, protozoa and nematodes follow along, grazing and cycling nutrients throughout the soil. Earthworms come up to feed and, they drag material down into the soil profile. Instead of mulch just sitting on top, it actually becomes part of the soil food web. This one change, mulching onto life instead of onto dryness, can literally double microbial activity beneath your feet. Most gardening advice is designed to be simple, scalable, and safe for beginners. Apply mulch is easy to teach. Explaining soil biology, moisture dynamics, and microbial signaling takes more time, and it doesn't fit neatly into quick tips or product labels. There's also an industry angle. Many systems rely on soluble fertilizers to compensate for biologically inactive soils. When soil life is thriving, plants feed themselves more efficiently, and dependency on inputs drops. That doesn't always align with commercial interests. But for home gardeners, especially those of us who care about long-term soil health, this knowledge is pure gold. When mulch meets moisture and fresh organic matter, decomposition starts from the bottom up instead of the top down. This matters because nutrient release happens right where plant roots and microbes can access it. Fungal networks begin forming almost immediately, especially if you're using carbon-rich mulches like straw, leaves, or wood chips. These fungi transport nutrients, improve soil aggregation, and increase water-holding capacity. So, bacteria really thrive in that moist interface, breaking down simpler compounds and releasing plant-available nutrients in slow, steady amounts. This, in turn, creates a stable, buffered environment where plants experience fewer stress spikes, growth becomes more even, and, pest pressure often drops because plants are better nourished and less attractive to insects that target weak tissues. The beauty of this mulch trick is that it works in any garden at any scale. The key is timing and layering, not special materials. If your soil is dry, water deeply before mulching. Don't just sprinkle the surface. Give it a slow soak so moisture penetrates several inches down. Then apply your mulch while the soil is still damp. This traps moisture and activates microbes instantly. If you want to supercharge the effect, add a thin layer of fresh organic matter directly on the soil before mulching. This can be green weeds, without seeds, kitchen scraps, chopped cover crops, or a light dusting of compost. You're not trying to create a thick compost pile, just enough to signal food is here. Once that living layer is in place, cover it with your main mulch. So, straw, dried grass, leaves, or wood chips all work. The top layer protects moisture, while the bottom layer feeds life. Beginners often struggle with soil that dries out quickly, plants that stall, and beds that seem hungry no matter how much fertilizer is added. This mulch approach stabilizes moisture and nutrition without complicated inputs. Experienced gardeners, on the other hand, will notice deeper changes. Soil becomes darker and crumbly, worm populations increase, fungal threads become visible when mulch is lifted, plants root deeper and require less intervention. At this point, the garden really starts to feel like a system rather than just a project that constantly needs fixing. It's kind of amazing to see how everything works together. So, one of the biggest mistakes folks make is applying mulch too thickly over fresh green material without enough airflow. That can actually create anaerobic conditions and, well, some pretty unpleasant smells. The solution here is all about balance. Just keep the green layer nice and thin, and make sure the mulch is loose enough for air to move through. Another mistake people sometimes make is disturbing the soil too often. This mulch trick really works best in low-till or no-dig systems, where those important microbial networks are left intact. Every time soil is turned, those networks are broken and must rebuild. Patience also matters. Soil life responds quickly, but, visible changes build over weeks and months. Try to resist the urge to check too often. Just lift the mulch gently now and then, observe, and trust the process. When you mulch this way consistently, something pretty remarkable happens. The soil begins to self-regulate, moisture lasts longer even in heat, and nutrients cycle naturally. Weeds become easier to manage because the soil surface is biologically active, not bare and inviting. Over time, you'll find yourself doing less work for better results. So, that's the real promise of living soil gardening, and honestly, it all starts with how you lay down mulch. This mulch trick isn't new. Nature has always worked this way. Forest floors are never bare. Organic matter just falls onto moist, living soil and is immediately claimed by life. Really, we're simply copying that process in our gardens. Once you start to see mulch not just as a cover, but as a conversation with soil life, everything changes. You stop feeding plants and start feeding ecosystems, and honestly, the ecosystem feeds your plants right back. If this way of gardening resonates with you, you're definitely in the right place. Soil Stories is all about uncovering these simple, powerful practices that build healthier soil and, more resilient gardens season after season. If you found this helpful, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, share this with a fellow gardener, and keep the conversation growing. The soil has stories to tell, and together, we're learning how to listen.